Rogue Wave, Part 3. He decided to keep saying it the rest of the day and into the night, or for as long as it took to penetrate the hall with words. Skylight, skylight, over and over. He heard the mental telepathy, but had not thought much about it before. Now it was the only way to reach her. Scoot finally thought that maybe Sully was hurt, maybe helpless up on that bottom. So that's why he couldn't open the doors and let her out. That had been the reason. Sully was up there with broken legs. So I have to get out on my own, she thought. Over the last 2 days, when she wasn't in the wheel, she had been exploring the Sea Dog, and she thought she knew all the exits, besides the companionway doors, which she knew she couldn't open. There was a hatch on the foredeck for access to the sails. Then there was a skylight, almost in the middle of the long cabin. Sully had opened it and remembered the air out the boat before they sailed, and she clung to the light fixture by the alcove in water up to her shoulders. Something kept telling her she should first try the butterfly window of the skylight. The unheard message was compelling. Try the skylight. Sully's voice was almost like a recording, a mantra, saying the same thing again and again, directly down to the position of the galley. Scoot remembered that an emergency flashlight was bracketed on the bulkhead above the starboard seat, and she assumed it was waterproof. From what Sully had said, Bo Tucker took great care in selecting emergency equipment. It might help to actually see the dogs on the metal skylight frame. She knew she wouldn't have much time to spin them loose, maybe 30 or 40 seconds before she'd have to surface for breath. Trying to think of an exact position of the upside down flashlight, she again tapped on the hall to let her brother know she was very much alive. He pounded back. Sully looked at his watch. Almost 4:30, about 3 hours to sundown. Of course, it didn't make much difference to Scoot. She was already in dank night. But it might make a difference if she got out after nightfall. He didn't know what kind of shape she was in. Injured, she might surface and drift away. The mantra kept on. Scoot dove twice for the boxy flashlight, found it, and turned it on, suddenly splitting the darkness and immediately feeling hopeful. But it was odd to see the Sea Dog's unusual overhead, the open hatchways into the bilge, and the debris. Floating on the shining waters, all stricken with lubricants. Odd to see the toilet upside down. She held the light underwater, and it continued to operate. Every so often, Sully lifted his face to survey the horizon, looking for traffic. He knew they were still within 16 or 17 miles of the coast. Without the drift was west. There was usually small boat activity within 20 miles of the shore, fishermen or pleasure boaters. Scoot worked herself forward a few feet, guessing where the skylight might be, and then went down to find the butterfly window, the flashlight beam cutting through the murk. It took a few seconds to locate them and put her hands on one brass dog. She tried to turn it, but it was too tight for her muscles, and she rose up to breathe again. Not knowing what was happening below or whether Scoot was trying to escape, Sully was getting more anxious by the moment. He didn't know whether or not the crazy telepathy was working. He wished she could tap again to let him know she was still alive. It had been more than 20 minutes since the last tapping. Scoot had seen a toolbox under the companionway steps and went back to try to find it. She guessed where the wrenches inside it, unless they spilled out. Using the flashlight again, she found the metal box and opened it, back to the surface to breathe again, and then back to the toolbox to extract the wrench. With each move, she was becoming more and more confident. A big sailboat beating south came into Sully's view, but it was more than 2 miles away, and the occupants, unless he was very lucky, would not be able to spot the Sea Dog mound and the man standing on it, waving frantically. 4 times Scoot needed to dive, once for each dog, and working underwater at least 5 times as difficult as trying to turn them in usual circumstance. She'd aimed the light and rest it to illuminate the windows. Finally, all the dogs were loose, and she rose once again. This time, after filling her lungs to bursting, she went down and pushed on the starboard window. It cracked a little, but the outside sea pressure resisted, and she had to surface again. Sully sat down, almost giving up hope. Oh, how long the air pocket would hold up was anybody's guess. The boat had settled at least 6 inches in 2 hours. It might not last into the night. Her sixth dive, Scoot found a way to brace her feet against the ceiling ribs. She pushed with all her strength, and this time the window opened. Almost out of breath, she quickly pushed her body through the old Sea Dog, released her. Treading water beside the hull, she sucked in fresh air and finally called out, "Sully!" He looked her way, saw the grin of triumph on the oil-stained imp face, and dived in to help her aboard the derelict. Shivering, holding each other for warmth all night, they rowed and rocked, knowing the boat was sinking lower each hour. Just after dawn, the Red Rooster, a long-range sporting fishing boat out of San Diego, bound south to fish for wahoo and tuna off the Reveille Goddard Islands, came within 100 yards of the upside-down seaboat and stopped to pick up its 2 chattering survivors. The Red Rooster's captain, Mark Stephen, asked, "What happened?" "Rogue wave," said Sully. That's what he planned to say to Bo Tucker as well. Steve winced and nodded that he understood. The old Sea Dog stayed on the surface a little while longer, having delivered the survivors to safety. Then her air pocket breathed its last, and she slipped beneath the water, headed for the bottom.